everybody, and I am live with a cat's tail. Oh, bye Katsu. Hi everyone, hope you're all doing okay this week. I hope you've had a good week. It's been a little bit of an unusual week in that some of us have been able to go out and I think meet people on benches outside and go to beaches. I don't know, what have you all been up to? Today I want to talk about vulnerability and what it feels like to be vulnerable in this particular situation. And by this I mean the coronavirus, by which I mean the coronavirus pandemic, and how it feels to feel like you're vulnerable to that, and the different levels of vulnerability and what we mean when we talk about vulnerability and all of that. So to get started, it's not very well in fact that there are actually two vulnerable lists. If you go onto the government guidance for if you're in the UK, that is, obviously some of you aren't in the UK, in which case this might not apply, but if you are in the UK, but do stick around because there's going to be lots of fun stuff after I've talked about this. In the UK, there are actually two vulnerable lists that have been published by the government, but the only one that's really been talked about a huge amount is the list for people that have to be shielding. And that list is people that are obviously and definitely vulnerable to coronavirus. Therefore, if they catch the virus, they are incredibly likely to experience complications of that virus and need medical intervention. So those people are people like people who have had organ transplants because they will be on medication which suppresses their immune system, people with cancers, various different types of cancer, people with heart conditions, people with severe lung conditions like COPD and severe asthma, and some other medical conditions that cause a reduction in the immune system, and therefore an increased likelihood to complications if you get coronavirus. So they're almost certain that these people will have problems if they get coronavirus, and have therefore asked those people to shield for well, initially it was for 12 weeks, but I think they've basically now said that that shielding will go on until told otherwise. And that must be incredibly difficult, because what shielding means is not mixing with other people, even within your own household in some cases. I think it's kind of down to individual interpretation, but the guidance is that you don't even mix with people in your own household and that you don't leave the house. And that must be incredibly challenging, particularly as lockdown restrictions start to be lifted and other people are given more freedoms. That group of people in the shielding group are going to feel perhaps that it's even more challenging to be shielding, particularly if they're not generally people who are housebound on account of their conditions and therefore aren't used to that. Can you just turn that down, because I can still hear myself, so there's definitely volume coming from there. Thank you, sorry. We've got a laptop over there with Mr. Purple managing your comments, and I'm over here. Yeah, that's better, great, thank you. So those people are shielding, and that's kind of really, really challenging. I'm not at all downplaying that, but kind of a straightforward, clear instruction. And in addition to that, theoretically, those people have been given support. Now, I use the word theoretically because my guess is that it's not been as well or rolled out or implemented as it was indicated that it might have been. But in theory, you can sign up on a government website and receive support and priority supermarket deliveries and things like this if you are on the shielding list. So I'm not actually on that shielding list because none of the conditions that I have are, thankfully, are on that list. And I'm very grateful for that, and I'm very grateful that I don't have to be shielding. Hi everyone that's just got in, by the way. Good to see you. I'm just going to talk for a while and then we'll get into a little bit more of a community feel. So yeah, that must be really challenging, and I'm incredibly grateful to not be on that list. And then there is a second vulnerable list that is not very well publicised. People that are on it have not been notified, so many people that are on this list might not be aware of it. But basically this is people who need to be extra careful with the social distancing guidelines. It includes people with diabetes, people, I guess, with less severe heart conditions, people with less severe lung conditions like mild to moderate asthma, which we have a child in the house who would fit in that category, so we consider him to be on the vulnerable list, and some neurological conditions. And basically it also says anybody who gets offered the winter flu vaccination as a result of their health condition, which is where I fit in. I have got a diagnosis of hypermobile Ehlers-danlos syndrome, and I also have a historical diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME. And so I get offered the flu vaccination every year and am therefore on that particular list. And the guidance for us is a little bit more woolly, which I found really challenging as an autistic person, because what it says specifically is that we should pay particular attention to social distancing guidelines and minimise contact with other people outside the home. So the general advice for the general public is to limit contact with people outside of the home. For us, it's to minimise contact. So obviously, me being me, I went and looked very closely at what those two words mean. And I think minimise essentially means avoiding any non-essential contact. So that means that I will not be going out to meet people from a 2-metre distance, as we have been told we are now allowed to do by the government. I will not be going to a supermarket. I will not be going to places that I can avoid going to. Now, I'm aware that I'm very fortunate to be in the position to do that to some extent, in that I've got support, people around that will help me get things from the supermarket. I was already a priority supermarket delivery customer on account of my disabilities, and I have many people living in my house, which means that I don't necessarily actually have to go outside of that for some social contact. But what's been difficult about that has been the lack of clarity and guidance for people on that second list. In fact, many of us didn't even know that that list existed until quite recently. And whilst obviously I would not want to be on the extremely vulnerable list for many obvious reasons, it would have been good to have received some clearer, more well-publicised guidance for those of us on the second list. And then, unofficially, there is a third list that has been discussed by professionals, I guess, of people who are vulnerable, but not necessarily vulnerable to the virus. So that's people who are vulnerable in this situation on account of their conditions, and people who are autistic would fit into this category. So even if you're in full health, and therefore not vulnerable to the virus, you are still more vulnerable, I guess, to mental health conditions, to struggling with kind of social distancing guidance, to struggling with anxiety around all this, to finding supermarkets, particularly in their current state, more challenging to visit. So if you have autism, you should still expect some support or some understanding about the vulnerability that you have to this particular situation, social, mental and emotional vulnerability, if you like. So yeah, those are all the kind of ways in which you can be vulnerable in this situation, and I think that the word itself can be quite challenging because nobody really wants to feel, I don't think, that they are vulnerable. We're all kind of encouraged from a really young age that we should be strong and that we should be tough and that we should toughen up and that we should man up and that we should, you know, be able to cope. And one of the challenges for autistic people in general, coronavirus aside, is feeling able to acknowledge, admit, cope with being vulnerable, being someone who might struggle more, being someone who might need more support, and being okay with that. And how do you keep your self-esteem high, feel like a functioning member of society, feel as valuable as the next person, whilst acknowledging that you have areas where you might struggle and need support. And that's something that I wanted to talk about, really. So if you've got any questions around that, now would be a good time to ask. Have we had any questions as of yet?
So Lorna's worrying about her low empathy and feels like she's the only autistic person like this. She doesn't grieve when people die.
Okay, Laura, yeah, no, that is kind of a topic that I've actually talked about before. If you have a look in my videos, if you have a search in my existing videos, I've done an entire video about bereavement and the ways in which autistic people can sometimes differ when we lose somebody. So that would probably be a really useful video. In terms of lack of empathy, that's not one that I can generally relate to, because I think in some ways I struggle with like too much empathy, like everyone's emotions and everyone's stuff is just kind of showering over me all the time, which can be a little bit overwhelming. So I don't have any direct advice, but I definitely think that it's the case that when something that's supposed to be sad happens, or when somebody dies, I can sometimes feel like I'm a little bit cold and emotionless because of the way that I process those emotions. So it's not that I don't have those emotions or that I don't have empathy, it's that I don't feel them in the same way, process them at the same speed, and experience them at the same time as everybody else. So I don't know whether that's something that you can relate to. There was another question there from Beth. Can you pass that on to me, please? One of my purple people. Oh, whilst I'm waiting for Mr. Purple to find the question, don't forget to like the stream, because YouTube likes that, and I like YouTube, and if you could,
Beth
please.
says she's not on the shielding list, but her and her children who are autistic are too mentally scared to go out and feel very vulnerable mentally. Have they got any tips?
Yes, Beth, I can relate to that, because as well as having some health vulnerabilities, I think there is like some of my feeling, which is around anxiety, just to do with the anxiety of what's going on and feeling scared to go out there, which is what I think that you're talking about. And I think it's okay at this stage to still be massively limiting how much we're going out there. I kind of think they are still saying stay at home as much as possible, so it's not such a bad thing. But if you do have to go out to go to supermarkets or for whatever reason, I think there are some ways to manage that anxiety. One of those ways is to look at statistics around the coronavirus, the likelihood of you catching it in a very brief encounter. So one of the facts is that the amount of time that it would take to have a reasonable chance of catching coronavirus being exposed to someone who has it is 15 minutes. So if you think about being in a supermarket and walking through a supermarket, you're never going to be next to someone for 15 minutes. So that might limit the anxiety. Looking at the statistics around how many people actually are catching it, how many people actually are becoming seriously unwell with it, it is still a very small minority. The vast majority of people are experiencing a mild illness, or they're asymptomatic and not getting any symptoms at all. So I think kind of looking at the facts around this situation can be empowering, because you can feel more informed, more in control, and less scared of this thing that at the moment can feel like, if I leave my front door I might end up in intensive care. That's just not the case. The reality is the chances of that happening are still relatively slim, but what we're doing is trying to protect the whole of society by staying in and limiting the virus's chance of spreading, so that those very, very few people who will become seriously unwell don't catch it in the first place. So I don't know whether that's helpful, but for me, kind of being rational like that can really help me to cope with being out there in the world when I need to be. So yeah, so lots of anxieties, I think, really around being vulnerable, whether medically or emotionally, to this current situation that we're all dealing with. Thank you, Beth. Yay! I didn't even deliberately do that. That is just what I do. So I think those things can be helpful. And yes, I think it's trying to keep some perspective between, and trying to keep some awareness. We aren't not going outside because our chances of becoming seriously unwell are high. I think that's the thing to remember. We're going outside, not going outside to protect the small minority who will become very unwell with this virus. And it is still okay to spend as much time as possible. In fact, it's actively encouraged to spend as much time as possible at home, not leaving the house. Additionally, I think there's something empowering about making your own decisions. So I've been talking to Mr. Purple about my anxieties around the changes to the lockdown, which came into action last Wednesday, as if now that the government had said I can meet someone in a park and I can go far away for a walk, I would have to do those things because the government's told me to do them, which is weird because I've never really been one for doing what I'm told anyway in the first place. So So you can make decisions for yourself. If you've got children, you don't have to send them back to school on June the 1st. You can make a decision that's right for you and your family. You don't have to drive to the countryside for a walk. You don't have to meet someone outside. You can still make your own decisions about how you're going to move forward with the information that you have about this virus. And I think that's quite empowering as well, being like, do you know what? It's actually ultimately up to me how I live my life. I mean, I think that's just generally empowering for life moving forward. And at some point I should just put what I just said on a little loop and play it back to myself whenever I'm feeling anxious, because I feel like I should be doing something a certain way because someone has told me I should be doing it that way. Yeah, I don't know. Is this helpful for anyone? So moving on to, do you want me to get into the books, movies, TV shows, the Lego, or the isolation creations? And I will say we've got some really cool isolation creations this week. Your work, your standards are seriously high. I'm like really impressed with a couple of the things I've been sent this week. Books. Okay, Catherine, you are the winner and you are a purple person, so you do get some level of priority. Oh, and so is Luce. Hi, Luce. So, book of the week is actually a series of books that I read quite a while ago. So I don't like massively remember the storyline, but I remember that I really enjoyed these books. And they are also written for young adults. And I think that books that are written for young adults are often, you think, oh, I can't read those books because they are for teenagers, but you can, you're allowed to. And this series is the Geek Girl series by Holly Small. And they are, I think there's about, well, there were 5 of them when we stopped reading them, but we just went and had a quick look while I was researching for this video, and there are actually, I think, about 7 or 8 of them now. So we'll be reading the next ones, myself and Super Kid, my eldest, who's also read them. They are Geek Girl by Holly Small, and it's about Harriet Manor, who is a self-identified geek and also works as a model, which really doesn't sound like it would work as a concept, but somehow really does. And I flew through them. Really easy read. That's another good thing about books for young adolescents. They can be a gentler read, and just really fun books that I really identified with when I needed something easy to read a few years ago when I was stuck in bed for a while, which is when I read them. My movie of the week is one that is really appropriate at this time, but I actually watched it about a month before lockdown started with Super Kid, and it is on Netflix, and it's called 5 Feet Apart, and it's a movie about some young patients with, I want to get this right, cystic fibrosis. And cystic fibrosis is obviously a very serious lung condition in which the patients often have to have like transplants and a lot of medical intervention to keep them alive. And it is about a group of patients who are in hospital and have to keep 6 feet apart. Did I say 6 feet? 5 feet, that's why it's called 5 feet apart. 5 feet apart from each other in order to not catch things from each other, which would prevent them from having their transplants. And it's all about how they kind of form a relationship under this very unusual circumstance. And I think it's actually been a really popular film since we all had to be 2 meters apart for obvious reasons. But I really enjoyed that. It is sad. Probably don't watch it if you don't want to feel sad or cry, because it is a sad, like, touching movie. But I really enjoyed it, and that's on Netflix. My TV show of the week is an unusual choice because it has been around for ages, but it's one of those sitcoms. Did you just hear Katsu? Meow, meow. Just from now on, I will be talking like a cat. Meow. So, my TV show of the week is a sitcom that has been around for a long time and actually just finished. I'm waiting on the last episode ever to come up. It is Modern Family, which I've chosen this because you can find it on 2 different streaming sites, so I thought it would cover more of you. It's on Netflix and it's on Now TV, and it's about a family who are all, so there's some about 3 or 4 nuclear families, by which I mean families who all live together. I think that's what nuclear family means. Why is it nuclear family? What's that about? Any answers? Answer me. I usually say answer in the comments, but we're on a live stream, so answer in the stream, I guess. But then answering the stream sounds weird. I don't know. Anyway, it's a comedy, and what I really love about it is it's a real like return to old-fashioned comedy. There's a lot of slapstick comedy in it. There's a lot. It's just a little bit corny, but it's kind of like those half-hour sitcoms that I used to watch when I was younger, like I don't know, Roseanne and Cheers and those kinds of half-an-hour comedies that you don't really get anymore, because comedies now have to be clever and ironic and meta and like just more somehow. And so Modern Family is kind of a simpler comedy, but I really enjoy it. It's really gentle, it's really funny, it's really well acted. I think it's great. And there's I think there's maybe 12 or 13 seasons, and we're just finishing it now. Katsu, come here. Shall I see if I can get the cat? Come on, up you come. You know you want to. Hello. Here's Katsu. Yeah, I really love Modern Family. I think it's great. And it's just about to finish, so you can basically go on there and binge the whole lot if you've not watched it at all, which I love that. I love, because I didn't watch The Big Bang Theory when it first came out, so by the time I started watching it, I think there were 8 or 9 seasons up there, and I basically was just watching about 6 or 7 episodes a day, which I really enjoyed being able to do. Katsu does have catitude. Has anyone got a super chat for Katsu? She likes super chats. I don't know whether she would clap though. Probably not. I don't want to make those kinds of promises. She's a cat, and as you all know, cats do what cats do, whether you like it or not, really. Cats do what cats do. That's my wisdom for today. Last week it's never the flapjacks. This week it's cats do what cats do. Okay, moving on. Before I stop making sense altogether. Would you like the Lego or the isolation creations this week? I will take the first answer. And in the meantime, I will stroke my cat. No, you can only see her tail, really, can't you? Hey! Katsu, can you clap? No, I'm not going to make the cat clap. That feels cruel. I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing that for you. There are lines, it turns out, and cat clapping is one of them. Lego, yay. Oh no, isolation creations. Sorry, Abby just pipped you to the post there, but you'll get to see it all, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so... No, it's all right, Abby. You win. You came first. I said the first person. I like to do what I said I'd do. Okay, so let me just find it. I've got an album. My first isolation creation was actually shared with me a couple of weeks ago, and then I forgot to share it. So I'm really sorry about that, Simon. This is Simon. Simon has been making collages, which he's been sharing on his Instagram stories quite a lot during the what are we doing? Lockdown, which has been entertaining me, and maybe he would like to share his Instagram, or maybe he would not, in the comments now. But he made this particular one, which is, I think it's an axolot. Is it an axolot, Simon? Axolotl. Isn't that a lovely word? It's an, bye Katsu. It's an axolotl with a bag. What's in the background? What's the diver doing, Simon? What is the diver doing? I don't know what the diver's doing. It's worrying me. So yeah, he's got a bag. I mean, honestly, if you want to say, I'm not going to say on my live stream that children might be watching what I think that diver's doing, but I think you all know what's going on there. He's fighting James Bond. There you go. That's just my mind then, isn't it? Okay. Anyway, sorry that I went there. I'm very sorry about that, people. I do have a bit of a sense of humour sometimes. I love it though. It's great. Simon, your collages kept me entertained for the first month of lockdown really nicely, so thank you for that. The next creation I have is from Tia Johnson. I don't know whether Tia's here, but I really like this. She made a salad with things that she went to the forest and gathered violets and dandelions. I didn't know you could eat dandelions. Did you guys know you can eat dandelions? Apparently that's a thing. I didn't know that, but she made this salad, which I think looks absolutely delicious. Violets and dandelions. I mean, I knew that you could eat, what is it that you can eat that we've got in our garden? Nasturtiums. I knew that you could eat nasturtiums, but I didn't think that you could eat violets and dandelions. So every day's a school day. Yeah, you can. Nice. It does look delicious, doesn't it, Beth? I think it looks great. I'm really excited. Some of the purple people will have been members for 2 months soon, which means that they get the little flower in their hair afterwards, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of those. Oh, hi Tia, you are here. Yes, we all would like to eat your salad very much, and I'd also like to know what dandelions taste like. Because have you guys ever done that thing where you are picking dandelions and then you accidentally lick your fingers and it tastes disgusting?
It's the dandelion leaves.
It's the leaves. Yeah. Yeah, it must be the leaves. Yeah. Anyway, the next two that I've got, I have to say,
Did you get the thing from Simon saying that it was an axolotl going on vacation fighting James Bond?
An axolotl going on vacation fighting James Bond. Obviously. How did I not see that? Sorry, Simon. The next two that I've got are pieces of art that I genuinely think are really, really impressive, and thank you so much for sending them to me. The first one is from Beth Green, who is in the chat, and she's made this really cool. But because I'd been talking about Katsu, she thought she'd share it with me. She made this really cool dotty cat picture using ink pens, and I think he or she. Oh, God, honestly. Shut up, Siri. I think it's awesome. How cool is that? I would properly put that on my wall. I think it's really good. I love that it's got like a little bit of colour, but not too much colour. I think it's great. Well done, Beth. You are a very talented artist. I have said it, therefore it is so. Am I getting a god complex? I don't know. Let's hope not. And then we have this really, really beautiful drawing from Jenny B, who drew this for me, apparently, and I think it's great. Look at this. Again, I would properly put this on my wall. Isn't that really just amazing? It puts my drawing into it's in a completely different category. This is proper artist, people, and I'm very impressed by that. I think that's brilliant. And then we go to Mark. Those of you who are regulars in my stream will remember that Mark makes things that don't necessarily look like the things that he was trying to make. And this week, Mark's feeling quite pleased with himself because he feels like he has taken a step closer to creating a thing that looks like the thing that he was trying to make. And I think we can all agree that that's true. So Mark was trying to make this lovely lemon drizzle cake, which looks delicious. And who doesn't love lemon drizzle? Am I right? Apart from, maybe some people don't, because I really don't like carrot cake. And I'm told that people do like carrot cake. So is that leave it, just ignore it. Ignore it. Somebody's at the front door. I've never had that happen before. Surely the chances of it are reasonably high. We're going to just ignore them. We're isolating. Go away. Anyway, Mark made this lemon drizzle, which I think you'll agree he is getting closer to a thing that looks like the thing that he was trying to make. I know that Mark tends to watch these afterwards, so Mark, well done. If everyone can give Mark a big well done, I'm sure he would appreciate that. Or would that be patronising? I don't know. What do you think? Yeah, so that is this week's Isolation Creations. I think that the Isolation Creation thing has been really fun. Some of the things that people have sent me have just been brilliant. I've really appreciated you guys making the effort to send me your isolation creations, and I've really genuinely been enjoying looking through them all. I haven't been able to share all of them because, well, we'd just be doing a whole live stream about isolation creations, but those that I've shared I think are brilliant and I really like them, and that's all I have to say about that. Moving on. The last regular Blue Peter slot in this week's live stream is my Lego. This is one that Wonder Girl, my youngest, you all know Wonder Girl, she has made some videos. You can find a day in the life of Wonder Girl in my content, and I think you'll agree that she probably ought to take over this channel. She suggested that I share this one with you this week because it's one of her favourites. It is from the Lego Elf and Fairy collection, which I do really like, but I haven't got a huge amount of, and I'm going to show you the separate parts. First of all, there is a turtle, a bejeweled Lego turtle, which I think you'll agree is just the cutest thing ever. His head moves up and down so he can be sad or enthusiastic or unsure. I feel like one of those YouTubers now that my kids watch that play with toys, so I won't go too far down that path. And he comes with a little, I think this is a troll. What do you think? A little troll with a basket. I'm not sure what this is, but it has a baby turtle on top. I'm not sure what it is. Some kind of rockery. I'm going to say it's a turtle rockery. Maybe it's a pond. I don't know. Oh, look, it fires things. Does it fire things? I feel like it does. Anyway, and a fairy. I love Lego minifigures. I actually have a whole display frame full of Lego minifigures. I've got some really good ones. But I do really like the fairies. I really like the minifigures that are a little bit more real people proportioned, like this one. So yeah, that is cute. So that is all of my regular things. So now I'm going to turn to your questions again. Have I got some any questions?
Gary asks if you're worried about the second peak.
Am I worried about... Oh, I've got something in my eye. Excuse me. Am I worried about a second peak? I'm not overly worrying about a second peak because it is in the list of things that I can't do anything about. I am taking action to avoid a second peak by staying at home and not doing any socialising. I'm also, I guess, being even more cautious because I think that the peak, actually, where I am in Bristol, the peak is about to happen. Because obviously London was ahead of the rest of the country with their peak, and there are still some areas that are yet to see their peak, and I think Bristol is one of them. So I'm being extra cautious anyway because of that. I am worried about a second peak, as I'm sure we all are, but I'm not letting it occupy my brain a huge amount because it is on the list of things that I can't do anything about, and things that I can't do anything about I try to not think about, so that's where I've put that one. Anything else?
Catherine says, do you struggle with the heat of summer?
Do I struggle with the heat of summer? No, I don't, but Super Kid massively struggles with heat. Any level of warmth, and she can't handle being outside at all. It really bothers her. Or even being on the bus when it's hot really bothers her. It gives her headaches. It makes her really struggle. I am completely the opposite. I really struggle with being cold. I really can't handle being cold. It's a real problem for me. So I can handle being full on warm and just sitting around and I actively enjoy it. Although my skin probably doesn't because I'm really fair and I have lots of moles. That's an attractive thought, isn't it? But I'd much rather be hot than cold, and Super Kid would much rather be cold than hot. So we have either extreme in this family. Is there anything else?
Abby asks, how is Coco doing with her service training?
Exciting news on the Coco front. So she's been responding really well to her training. She will now, one of the things we were really focusing on teaching her was to settle so that if we're in a shop or a museum or a cafe, she will reliably settle and not be up and barking or bothering people or doing anything. So she now completely gets that she needs to settle on her blanket, which we will then take out whenever we ask her to, because she's going to get a treat. But as soon as she gets the treat, she stops being settled and moves on. So I'm not really sure how to get her to like settle for a long time. But the exciting news is I actually had an email from Pausable, who are the organisation who are going to be registering her and training her as an assistance dog, and they haven't been able to work during this period, and they were able to let me know that the trainer that I'm going to be working with is going to be working again really soon, so they're ready to schedule us in for that initial assessment and then hopefully ongoing training really soon, which means that soon hopefully I'll be able to share some photos of her with you in her little jacket, her little assistance dog jacket, which is very exciting. Other exciting news that happened, but it's slightly frustrating, is that the Purple Ella stickers have been printed and do exist now as stickers, and they arrived at my house today. But we're quarantining all post for 48 hours, so I can't show them to you. But by, what day are we on? Wednesday. By the start of next week and by next week's live stream, I'll be able to show you stickers, and those of you who are purple people will be able to give me your addresses and I will be able to send you a sticker. And those of you who are not purple people will be able to either buy a sticker off of me or sign up to Purple People, because why wouldn't you? Because now you get a free sticker, a free monthly video, community posts, emojis, and the joy of knowing that I'm not having to work for free anymore, because you are supporting me to be a creator. And if those aren't good enough reasons, I don't know what are. there you go. That's my little... I'm getting better at selling myself, I think we can agree. Yeah.
Constance says she's getting very anxious, her medication's not helping, she can't speak to her own GP, only duty doctor, and she doesn't like talking to people she doesn't know on the phone. Any advice?
Advice for...
Feeling anxious, just feeling anxious. And not being able to talk to her GP about her medication.
Oh, okay, yes, that must be really tricky. I would really struggle with that. My first piece of advice would be, if at all possible, is there somebody who could speak to a duty GP on your behalf? Often you'll have to go on the phone to say, yes, it's okay for this person to speak to you. But once you've done that, usually somebody else would be able to handle that call for you. If that's not possible, make sure that you've got written on a piece of paper in front of you exactly why you are calling, what information you want to give the doctor, what information you want to receive from the doctor, what you want the plan to be moving forward, so that when you make that call, you've got kind of a script. You know, like, I'm going to tell them this, I'm going to ask them this, I'm hoping to receive this information and have this plan. And I think that can help reduce anxiety, because a lot of the anxiety for me about talking on the phone is not knowing what to say or when to say it, when to talk, when to stop talking, all of that. Whereas if I've got kind of a plan and a script, I can kind of handle it a little bit better. I hope that's helpful. Was there another question?
Beth said she'd like to have a dog, but can you recommend having a therapy dog to visit? Her children are all autistic as well. Would it help with anxiety?
Well, there are dogs that work as therapy dogs rather than assistance dogs, and they are, as I said in my video about this, they are pet dogs that have been registered with Pets as Therapy to visit people. And I'm not sure whether they do home visits, but I think they probably do. I think a good starting point would be to go on the Pets as Therapy, the PAT website, and get in touch with them and see moving forward whether that was something that you could access more as like a part-time thing than taking on a dog, because taking on a dog is a massive commitment. It's not easy. I'm not sure I would be able to have been able to cope with the initial kind of puppy stages without the support that I had from Mr. Purple and the rest of the family. And if that doesn't work out, there is an organisation called Borrow My Doggy that I used for a little while with Coco when I wasn't able to walk her because of my health, where you can sign up to meet someone's dog and moving forwards walk their dog, or in fact have their dog visit you at home, which is like a mutually helpful situation where they need dog care and you want interaction with the dog. And you could definitely ask to meet the dog and see whether that's going to work before you commit to helping with that dog. And it's an arrangement that you don't have to do forever. You can kind of do it for as long as suits both parties. So that might be another way to get access to a dog. And as I say, Coco was on Borrow My Doggy for quite a while. So there will be other people with dogs that are similar to Coco probably looking for that. And I would definitely recommend Cavachons as a breed if you're looking on Borrow My Doggy, because they are generally quite chilled out. They can be a little bit barky, but other than that, they are generally chilled out little furry beautiful creatures.
Grace T's asking, how are you dealing with the mental health impact within the Purple household? She's classified as complex and now her mental health is deteriorating.
I've been really fortunate. I don't really know quite why or how. I think probably because in some ways you guys are probably helping me out, because I've got this focus of doing these weekly live streams and putting up my regular content and the extra work that I've been doing for like the National Autistic Society and press interview. I've been on a couple of press things recently. That's really kept me focused on something that I have a purpose to do, which has helped to reduce my anxiety. I think if I'd just been sat around at home without a real purpose, I might have found that more of a struggle. The children have all coped really well. I have created a very clear structure for them to live within. And I was reading this morning actually on an article from a psychologist that the best way to cope with anxiety is to live with some kind of a structure, because we need routine as humans, autistic or not. We need routine to cope. And even if you're really busy, that doesn't necessarily mean you're busy in a structured and routine kind of a way, because sometimes being really busy can be massively overwhelming and anxiety provoking, unless, so for example with me, I have a structure where I've got between 1 and 4 hours a day when I focus on my work at a certain time each day, so it's not overwhelming. I'm working all the time. but it is keeping me busy. So I think it's that balance between not being too busy and having what you are doing in like a structured way of living, so that you know what's coming and can predict your days, and that can reduce your anxiety. And I think it's important to say that if you do feel that your mental health problems are overwhelming you and becoming really challenging, it would be a good idea to speak to a medical professional. And just because of the coronavirus, that doesn't mean that you can't ring your GP and you can't access mental health support at this time. Obviously, it's always been a challenge, certainly here in the UK, to access mental health support at the best of times. So I'm not saying it'll be smooth sailing and brilliant, because I would be lying if I said that had been my experience every time. But I would definitely try to reach out if you feel like you've crossed that line from something that you can manage yourself into being generally quite poorly with your mental health at this time.
Cosmic Pixie's asking, what kind of things will you be training Coco to do as an assistant stock? She's got cabbage knowledge, just starting in the process.
That's a really good question. Well, I want her to work when I have a meltdown. I want her to, when the sort of bit of the meltdown where it wouldn't be appropriate for her to be near me is over, I want her to be something comforting. I want her to come and lie next to me after I've had a meltdown. I want her to do deep pressure for myself and for Wonder Girl. So that means on command, sitting on our laps in a way that provides us with deep pressure therapy. And then generally, I just want her to be well behaved out of the house so that she can be with me wherever we go. And by well behaved, I mean not trying to get hold of food, not interacting with other people, just kind of walking with us and settling when asked, and not trying to get hold of anything in the environments that we're in, so that she can be reliably out in the world in a way that isn't obtrusive for other people, but means that I can have her with me, because when she's with me, I feel calmer. Definitely. Right, so I've just gone past the 40-minute mark, which is where I normally stop. So I think I would take 2 more questions if you guys have them, and then I'm going to draw this to a close. And what have we got any questions waiting? Or if you don't want to ask me any questions, I could just stare at you. I have wonky eyes. It's weird staring into a camera live streaming. It is weird, but I think it's starting to feel more natural because I've been doing it for a while now. So if you haven't got any more questions, that's absolutely fine. No one's insisting that you ask me questions, because you might just be hanging out, which is great. In which case, let me tell you, oh, I'm dropping things. I dropped my fancy pen. In which case, let me tell you what is coming up. On Friday, I'm quite pleased with Friday's video. I'm like, sometimes I make videos and I think, yeah, this is going to be okay. And then occasionally I'll make one and I'll be like, oh, this video I'm really pleased with. But I'm also slightly terrified. It is a video about autism and functioning labels and the ways that we talk about autism. And I'm quite terrified to put it out there, because I am not holding back at all in my opinions on this area. And I've worked really hard on it. There's even illustrations. I mean, what more do you want from me? Marie has a question, but we didn't see it, apparently. Can you scroll back and see if you can find that? No. If you want to ask again, Marie. Oh, are you ever afraid of getting seriously ill with cancer? Yes, I do have a little bit of health anxiety, but I try not to think about it too much. I think it's like any other kind of anxiety. The root cause is that like feeling out of control thing, and it comes up in a variety of different forms, and health anxiety is one of them. My health anxiety is not too bad, but I think it's probably quite normal to occasionally worry that you might get something serious, especially when you've got a chronic illness like I do. So I have like a variety of symptoms that I have every single day, like nausea and pain and fatigue. Every day I have those symptoms. And occasionally you go, I'm just living with these symptoms because I've got a diagnosed chronic illness. How would I notice if something else happened to me? But on the whole, I try, this is my advice in general, just not to think about it, because it doesn't help. And I think if it crosses the line into being an obtrusive thought, therefore you can't just not think about it, that's when you need to start thinking about some kind of professional support with that. So I don't know how helpful that was. Probably not that helpful. Yeah. But if you have actually got, thank you, Catherine, that's a good reminder. If you have actually got lumps and bumps and things that could be stuff, you should get those things checked out, because that's important. And they are definitely saying that the situation we're in should not be prohibited to getting these things checked out. Okay, so Friday's video is functioning labels. I want to remind you that I have a members only club called the Purple People. It is awesome. Please feel free to, if you are enjoying my videos all the time, feel free to remember that I do want to turn this into a career, and by joining the Purple People you're kind of taking me one step closer to making that a reality. So please, if you can possibly think about doing that, that would be really helpful and I would appreciate it. Please like the stream so that YouTube thinks that, what does it think? I don't know. Just apparently that's a good thing, so please do that. I will be back next week, so in the meantime, if you have any isolation creations of any standard, because all of them are worthy and have value, please email them to me, ella@purpleella.com. I will be back next week. Have a good week. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.